Hi, welcome. We are going to be talking today about how you target your communications, whether you're speaking to investors, clients, work associates, maybe you want to figure out how to talk to your boss or your coworkers or your direct reports. And we're going to be talking about how you can use a Myers-Briggs type indicator assessment and knowing yourself and the other person, appreciating those differences and improving your communication. A little bit about me. I am CJ Liu. I am an MBTI certified practitioner. I've been a business and career coach for 13 years. I have a self-help radio show that publishes weekly content on firedupwithcj.com. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and then on my website, firedupwithcj.com. Before doing media, I worked 20 years in the Fortune 500 companies in a variety of different roles: marketing, business development, product development, and finance. So let's talk about the objectives for today. In this session, you're going to learn how to land your communications through a personalized approach, knowing both your communication style preference as well as the person that you're communicating to. You're going to learn the Myers-Briggs type indicator preference for thinking and feeling. In the previous two slideshows, we talked about the Myers-Briggs, the tests, it's where it was created, who created it, and also covered both extroversion and introversion, as well as sensing and intuition. Today we're going to be talking about the third preference type, thinking and feeling. At the end of the session, you'll get some insight on your preferred communication style, as well as learn how to spot clients' needs through their behavioral cues and learn how to talk their language. And we'll also offer some communication tips on how to talk to people who are the opposite of your preference type. So here's a quick review of the MBTI preference pairs. You'll often hear people running around saying, I am an ENTJ or ISFP or ISFJ. Those are four letters that spell out four different preferences. In part one, we talked, as I said before, extroversion and introversion, sensing and intuitive for part two, and today we're talking about thinking or feeling. So here's what I think is interesting about thinking or feeling is that 60% of men surveyed in the U.S. Decide and come to conclusions using a thinking type of process preference. And 35% of women use a thinking preference. Now, with respect to a feeling preference, 40% of men prefer to use a feeling modality, whereas 65% of women use this type of feeling modality to process. We're going to be talking about judging and perceiving in the fourth presentation. So let's talk about thinking and feeling. So how would you spot someone who is a thinking or feeling type? So thinking and feeling is really how we make decisions. So people who prefer thinking may ask, is this logical? So if you actually are in a group meeting with them and they're trying to make a decision, they're going to see, well, what are the logical implications? They're going to provide you frank and candid feedback. Sometimes I'm a thinking type. I've been told that my feedback can be hurtful. Thinking types are doing this out of a place of love. They're trying to be objective, direct, and dispassionate. And sometimes there's kind of a win-lose, winner-take-all kind of attitude with thinking. So that's how you may spot someone who makes decisions via a thinking type. With respect to data, they're going to want to look and make sure that you're using logical, rational analysis. And they're going to take whatever you're presenting and spot weaknesses in it. And they're going to want to ask you why. And they're going to want to point out those weaknesses. And they're going to ask you, well, what evidence do you have of that? Do you have any objective information? And they may like to debate and feel like they're confronting you, but really what they're trying to do is tease out the very best possible answer. As I said before, they like competition, and it will feel like they're testing you, but really what they're trying to do is get to the best possible outcome. And it's a way of showing respect and courtesy to you to show that they're really thinking about stuff. They really care about what you're trying to solve, and they want to help you. they're the kind of folks in a group that will say, okay, what are the pros and cons of this? Let's put together a list. What are the pros and what's the con? What's the criteria? How are we going to know when we make this decision that it's a good decision? What do expert advice say, or experts out there say about this particular issue? And they'll be very precise with the language. Did you say this? Because I thought when I heard you said that, you said this. And they're going to be very task oriented versus being relationship oriented. You may hear them say, well, if this is true, then that means that this is also true, which means, blankety blank. So this is how a thinking person would act, look, and feel like, sound like in a meeting. Now let's contrast this to a feeling person. A feeling person is really making decisions based on how it affects other people. Will anyone be hurt by this decision? They care about the impact of people. They really care about developing rapport with people. They have a lot of empathy. Well, how do you think that's going to make our vendors feel when we do that? They like to hear many points of view. Hey, I want to hear your point of view before you make a decision on this. They like to support and nurture people. They're trying to find a win-win. The kind of data they like is subjective belief. So tell me your anecdotal advice about that particular project. They want to know their value. They want to know how everything maps to values. How does this map to our culture? We are saying that our mission is this way and our values, but how is the decision that we're making mapping to that? And they'll like to know, well, how did other people resolve that situation? They can see the positive in any situation that you give them. So you may present a lot of hard, bad news, and I say, well, the good news is that now we know. Now at least we know. And they like positive affirmations. They like to collaborate. They prefer case studies and stories about how other people handled that decision. So they prefer that type of data. They're warm. They really care about harmony, and they're relationship oriented versus task oriented for people in the other category. And next, we're going to be using the proper use of MBTI. So really what MBTI is it helps you find out what your preferences are. So when you're looking at those thinking and feeling sides, preferences, which one felt more natural to you? And you maybe, let's say that you're a thinking person like myself and you'd like to prefer feeling or go into that arena more. It's really about starting from where you are, but really expanding towards wholeness and moving towards being able to be versatile so you can be thinking and feeling. It's not designed for excuses. Well, I don't know. Have the other person do the pros and cons list because I'm just thinking about the people. So that's not really what this is meant for. Really, it's about loving and appreciating your type. When I was in the workshop where they were teaching us about thinking or feeling, they gave us an example to help differentiate if you're a thinker or feeler. And I was going back and forth because on my Myers-Briggs, I'm literally in the middle between thinking and feeling. And the biggest problem that I had was that I thought, well, are they saying that a thinking person doesn't care about people? Because I care about people. I'm not heartless. That's not what this is saying at all. It's just preferring, like when you're trying to make a decision, what information do you prefer? And you may find that you are like myself, you fit between two different types, but the test will identify a type for you, and you'll have to determine whether it's correct or not. I spent probably 2 days trying to figure out if I was thinking or feeling. And mostly because I was feeling a little bit bad about not for being a thinking type. So really, it's about loving and appreciating your type. When I read through the descriptions, you may not find that all of the different aspects that I described by that preference and that type made sense to you. Maybe not all will fit. Maybe some of them will, some of them won't. Again, there are 4 preference pairs, and we use both preferences in each pair. But when we have a choice, we use one more than the other. I'm going to do a little exercise to figure out whether you're thinking or feeling. Let's say that I was you're a manager of a department, and I said, well, we're going to have to cut your expenses in half. And you know that a good portion of the expenses has to do with people, so that if you were looking at that, you may come to the conclusion, if you're a thinking type, that, well, let's cut the people. There are a couple of low performers. In order to make our numbers and to cut the budget in half, we need to fire 2 or 3 people. That would be a really, really hard choice for a feeling person to make. In fact, they would try to make other cuts aside from that cut, even if it was the rational, logical decision. And so maybe thinking about your type and figuring out what you would prefer. If you were a thinking or feeling, if you were presented with that same problem, which you had to cut your budget in half, what would you do? Would you look at it rationally and logically? You may not want to fire 2 or 3 people, but it may be the most logical thing to do. Or you may conclude that some combination of firing instead of 2 or 3 people, maybe get firing 1 person and cutting some expenses in some other areas would make sense. But that was a perfect example, and the class really came down to very different conclusions with respect to thinking and feeling. And the feeling people would absolutely not fire anyone in any circumstances. When they went through the scenario, the feeling person would say, well, I would not want to fire anyone. How about, X person? How about Susie, who just had a baby? I wouldn't want to fire her. That would be awful. And so they're looking at their values and they're looking at people issues. So using that example, given the choice, which do you prefer? A logical, rational analysis or more of a people's feeling, value-oriented? So another way that you can think of this is think of a time when someone asked you to make a decision and you really felt frustrated. What was the information or thought process that was missing? And what was the information presented, or how was the information decided that you felt frustrated with? So we're going to take 30 seconds as you think a little bit about what you think your type may be. Or whether you may be like myself, just right in the middle. All right, now that you have made some guesses on your type, then I'll ask you to jot down a time when you thought you were really frustrated, where you thought it was hard to make a decision because either the information wasn't presented correctly, or you were working with someone who's coming up with factors and issues that you thought didn't make sense to you. So what was the information? How was it presented? What information was missing for you? All right, so now that you have gone through a self-assessment, let's look at how you would communicate if you're communicating to someone who's a thinking type. Well, if you're working with someone who prefers thinking as a way of operating, you want to make sure that you're very objective, you demonstrate competence when you're talking to them, you want to be honest and positive. You want to have a detached, logical, and objective analysis of the data. You want opinions with logical reasoning. You want to be straightforward. You want to be clear and precise. You want credible resources. You want to have a cause and effect. If we do this, then the effect will be that. You want to make sure to not become overly emotional about the topic. You want to focus both on task and the relationship. And part of it is being okay with debating, because thinkers like to debate. I would also add that I think when thinking people give you feedback and you're a feeler type, not to take it personally. They're giving you critical feedback is it may not feel like love, but it's a way to demonstrate their love, care, and attention to your project and wanting the very, very best outcomes for you. But they may not be kind in delivering it. So understand that they're really trying their best when they're doing that and trying to have the best outcomes. All right, let's talk about how you would work with people who prefer feeling and making decisions. Well, it's really good not to just dive in. Take a little time to get to know them. Avoid critiquing and evaluating because it hurts their feelings. They're going to take it personally. So, one of the things that I do when I now work with people who are feeling types is I'll say, what kind of feedback would be helpful at this point? How much information is too much for you, and what kind of feedback would be helpful? And they'll tell me, like, I had a situation where someone asked me for feedback with a document, and I just took redlining, and it was a sea of red. And I think the person was devastated afterwards. I really felt bad, but they really took it personally. They actually wouldn't even talk to me afterwards. So I think it's much better if I had said, what kind of feedback and how much feedback do you want? Because it really hurts a feelings it hurts them when you give them kind of critical feedback or too much feedback. It just hurts their feelings, I think. When you are working on a project and you want a feeling type to make a decision, make sure that you are including, like, here are the values. We thought about these particular values. We thought about the people. Here are the people issues. Here's how we're going to roll out this so that there's harmony within the group. Be friendly. Be encouraging. Make sure that the personal needs is part of the criteria. What are the needs of that department? What do they really need? How are we going to make sure that they're happy? How are we going to make sure that the solution that you come up with works with the other departments as well and just doesn't benefit one department but benefits all the different departments? Connect with them and then challenge. But don't, when we want to get feedback, you want to give very balanced feedback. I really liked your document because it had a lot of really good ideas. There are just a few areas where I think it would help the document to include. And if you had 10 ideas, maybe consider asking them how many they want and pick the first top 3 that are the most important. So you want to connect first, then challenge, and then acknowledge your feelings. So when you're talking to someone with a feeling, you may actually just look at their face and see if they have hurt feelings. You can tell just they'll either be shut down, they'll feel pulled back energetically. You'll know if they're not really, you haven't created a win-win. All right, so let's do a quick wrap up and how you actually put all this into practice and creating a game plan. So the first thing is you want to determine your Myers-Briggs type by either taking assessment, the MBTI assessment, or alternatively, looking at some of the slides and self-diagnosing what you think you are, or picking out your preferences, I should say. There's a lot of stuff on this list. If you look at these 2 different types, lots and lots of ideas. So don't try to boil the ocean. Pick a few. So let's say that you're working with someone who's a thinking type and you're a feeling type. Then maybe part of what you want to do is be okay with when you're giving a presentation, always make sure that you have objective data. So try that for a week, or try to just talk in a detached, logical, objective way and just see what that feels like. Or try not to be emotional when you're talking about something. For a feeling type, for 1 week, try getting to know someone before you ask them to go do something for you. Try focusing on people and values and like, hey, I noticed that you're upset about it. It seems like it may be a problem for you. What's going on? And they'll tell you what their value is. I don't really think you're treating that person right, or I really feel like when you did that was too harsh. They'll tell you what values they care about. Or maybe they'll ask you, maybe you can practice 1 week on connecting first, saying, more positive things than negative on a document or project that you're critiquing. All right, so pick one thing, practice it for a week, and then after you have mastered that, move on to the next. Now, as I've said in part 1 and part 2, it may be that trying on these different ways of navigating the world feel a little bit unfamiliar. And what will happen is maybe the first time you try it will feel weird and maybe it will feel inauthentic. But over time, what you'll find is that you'll be able to be more flexible and be able to do be able to be both thinking and feeling when you're working with other people, become natural versus a natural part of you versus something right now in the beginning may feel inauthentic or manipulative. It's not. It's really about getting to know and understand and appreciate differences. All right, so how would you get your MBTI step results? Well, you can go to mywholelife.net. You can order an MBTI type. You can also, once you get your type, get some personalized coaching. The MBTI type really just gives you a sense of your personality, and because it's your personality, you'll take that same personality and use it whether you're selling, making decisions, and conflict, and knowing your personality will help you in all of those areas. And so the coaching would really be about taking your type and then approaching a particular problem that you have at work or home and giving you some advice on that. If you would like, you can contact me at cjliur@gmail.com to get coaching as well as your type report. Thank you so much for listening, and make sure to stay tuned when we go to talk about the last preference pair, judging and perceiving. Thank you.